Welcome everyone to the History Podcast section of the Archon channel. Today we're taking a focused look at a really fascinating piece of military history. We're pulling this straight from historical sources that have been shared with us. Our goal is really to unpack the story of ancient incendiary weapons, and we're focusing specifically on a pretty formidable Byzantine innovation, one famous for, well, burning on water. Fire's always been part of warfare, hasn't it? Simple torches, flaming arrows. People were always trying to use fire, especially in sieges, against wooden forts or ships. Historical sources, they mention early stuff, right? Assyrians, Greece in the Peloponnesian War. Even the Romans had things like the Phalerica, that fiery spear. But the Byzantines, they developed something else.
Exactly. What the sources often talk about is this liquid fire. And it wasn't just that it burned, it had this really unique and terrifying quality, particularly at sea. Regular fire, water puts it out. But this stuff, once it was lit, it apparently could just float and keep burning on the water.
On the water itself.
Yeah. Imagine being on a wooden ship, surrounded by flames you just couldn't douse with seawater. Historical accounts really capture the sheer panic this caused. There's one source, I think, describing a 7th century battle, talks about ships just recoiling in terror, this burning liquid raining down, impossible to put out, just clinging to the ships.
Wow. That really paints a picture.
Yeah.
So, okay, how did they actually use it? They weren't just like lobbing buckets of it, were they?
No, that's where the real innovation comes in. The sources describe some pretty sophisticated projection systems. The Byzantine Navy, especially, they had these specialized ships, sometimes called dromones siphonophoroi.
Siphon bearers.
Right, siphon bearers.
Yeah.
Equipped with these siphons, basically bronze tubes, often mounted right on the prow. Some accounts even say they shaped the nozzles like animal heads, lions or dragons, maybe.
Seriously, projecting fire from a dragon's mouth.
Apparently. They acted like early flamethrowers, basically.
Yeah.
Propelling the burning liquid onto enemy ships or, siege works on land.
Like a flamethrower. Propelling burning liquid. That must have given them just an incredible edge, especially at sea.
Oh, absolutely. The history makes it clear this technology was a real game changer, super effective at close range against wooden ships, just set them ablaze, completely uncontrollable fire.
Yeah.
And historical records credit it with helping the Byzantines hold off major attacks, win key naval battles.
Yeah.
It really helped preserve the empire, when things were looking dicey. And it wasn't only at sea. Sources mention it in land sieges, too.
Huh.
Presumably against things like wooden gates, siege towers, that sort of thing. Anywhere that persistent, water-resistant fire would be useful.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly effective liquid fire, shot through siphons, sounds powerful. But it wasn't gunpowder, right? That's different.
Exactly different.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction the historical sources make clear. The exact recipe for this Greek fire, as it later became known, well, still debated, lost to history mostly. But writers back then and later mentioned ingredients like sulfur, resin, maybe bitumen, and likely some kind of petroleum distillate like naphtha,
Okay.
which is fundamentally different from gunpowder. Gunpowder is, a specific chemical explosive, saltpeter, sulfur, charcoal.
Right, a different chemical reaction entirely.
Completely. The history of gunpowder, that's its own separate story, much later, different places. This Byzantine weapon was its own unique thing for its time. A marvel of chemistry and engineering, really.
It's just fascinating how mastering one specific technology and keeping it secret for so long
Centuries.
could have such a huge impact on military strategy, on the fate of an entire empire.
It really makes you think about the power of that kind of specialized knowledge, doesn't it? So, wrapping up based on the historical sources, this liquid fire, Greek fire, was absolutely vital for Byzantine military strength, especially for their navy and in really critical sieges. It was unique, potent,
And definitely not gunpowder.
right, distinct from later stuff like gunpowder. It leveraged chemistry, mechanics, all the devastating effect. Just think about the immense power held by those few who actually knew the secret, how to make it, how to use it. This has been a presentation hosted in the History Podcast section of the Archon channel. And here's something to think about. What other potentially world-altering technologies from history might have existed, kept secret by just a handful of people, maybe now lost, leaving only faint clues behind in the record?